So we have two more presentations before lunch. So bear with us. This one is an exciting one with two high-profile speakers from the Silicon Valley who come to New York to talk to us about Adobe and PayPal. So you've heard Ritesh this morning already, and if you missed it, he talked a lot about how Adobe continues to support Magento open source and all the possibilities with Adobe Commerce. And we are welcoming Mudita Tiwari, who works at PayPal, and she's Senior Director of Developers Experience in the product organization. So she's here to make sure that the PayPal product is well integrated with whatever you want to do. So here, our duo is going to share some practical tips on how payment can help boost your brand and your e-commerce business. Welcome, Mudita and Ritesh.
We're going to do a mic test. Seems like it's working. Hello, everyone. How are you? It's two of us before lunch starts, so we'll try to make this as entertaining as possible.
This became a little bit formal. I thought we were just going to have some chairs and have a conversation here, but I think it became a little formal, but that's okay. We're going to work with this. I think that's fine. You might be happy or sad. There are no slides for this presentation. So we are just going to go over some of the different experiences and areas that you might consider from a payments perspective.
Sounds good. Yeah, so we wanted to make this an informal chat, quite honestly, just to talk about commerce, payments, next-gen developer experiences, and keep it as casual as possible for everyone. So in case there is a pressing question, we can take that. We'll try to, we did seek a lot of sort of guidance on the topics that make sense for us. So maybe we start with just e-commerce, and Ritesh spoke passionately about that in the morning. So why don't we kick it off with that, Ritesh? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And so, the way that I would characterize, as you consider sort of the customer experience and sort of the customer journeys, right? Most businesses will probably break it apart into three areas, right? The first area is all about the customer acquisition and how do you get someone onto the website. And the middle portion is around the actual shopper experience. And then the last portion is around fulfillment, right? How do you get the product delivered out and then returns and that whole area? For today, we're going to focus specifically on that shopper experience and more on sort of the, payment fulfillment portion of it, and what are the best practices that you might consider as you're trying to build that portion of the business out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, at least from our lens, regardless of, obviously, of the industry vertical that we support, we think about the customer coming in and really having some sets of expectations, right? Me as a customer, when I go in, I want to be able to buy whatever it is that I want, whenever I want, from any place that I want. And obviously, as Ritesh was talking about, the next idea of that needs to be solved by the merchant. So a merchant is thinking about, hey, if my customer comes in and wants anywhere, anytime, any place in the globe kind of a payment experience, what do I need to do from the e-commerce perspective then to fulfill that expectation? And if we see how merchants really think about their problem set, it's all about having a core e-commerce platform, which I'd love Ritesh to talk about a little bit more. But core services need to work. You should be able to buy, you should be able to return, you should be able to do dispute management, you should be able to receive your product, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, the platforms that you're on need to be reliable, performant, available, hopefully scale for global nature of the product as well. And then, of course, be able to interact with the customer, because I'm sure all of you know the social aspect of commerce is equally important, not just, obviously, the physical or the digital buying and selling of goods. And so from the merchant perspective, therefore, the omni-channel presence becomes extremely interesting and exciting for future. So when we say omni, of course, there's a traditional set or traditional way we think. You have native, as in the mobile experience is quite common. Obviously, in the market, it's table stakes. You have the online presence. We talked a little bit earlier in the discussion about point-of-sale systems or in-store capabilities. But then, of course, the intermingling of these experiences is super interesting, and that's what has become energized during the COVID times. I mean, all of this digitization magnified in the past 2 to 3 years, where the customers, such as myself, yourself, probably we expect to buy in the store, return in the store, buy online, return in the store, and combinations thereof. And that has become the expectation. Now imagine small businesses having to keep up with that level of expectation that has changed in the market. So I don't know how you feel about that, Ritesh, but it's quite a significant ask.
I think you covered it very well, right? I mean, and there are certain aspects, I would say, about running a business that you want to be good at, and there are certain aspects that you might consider having someone else worry about, right? And I think payments are one of those things that, I mean, with enough time and energy, I'm sure you could become an expert on payments, but it would probably be better to become an expert on your customers and figure out how to deliver the right experience that way. Also, the headaches around compliance with PCI, and if anyone is involved in any of that stuff and has gone through a PCI audit, or at least even goes through sort of the re-up of the of the questionnaire every year, that becomes challenging and at some point unnecessary. And also then delivering all the different payment methods that are, that shoppers come accustomed to want and to actually want to use. So really looking for a solution where you can bring all of that, integrate it in, relieve yourselves of some of that complexity, but be able to deliver in a given way. And so solutions that are super exciting for me are ones where that control is given to merchants who are trying to deliver that experience, but the liability goes away. I mean, that's the best situation, right? Where you are able to deliver what you want, but you don't actually have to worry about, am I doing this in the right way?
And I'll add to that, like the value-added services that we need to start thinking about quite clearly as well, and articulating that for the merchants. So in my mind, value-added services are a spectrum of offerings. So value-add services component for me would be managing returns well. At least in the US, I would say we're obsessed with buying and returning, and that's an important shopping behavior, at least that sometimes I'm guilty of. And so how do we do that and manage that well? Dispute management. We're dealing with money. We're dealing with people's emotions around buying. So to make sure that when payments happen, we do that with transparency, reliability, accuracy, and then able to solve the questions that our customers are asking of us. And then, of course, I know, Ritesh, your favorite topic is buying for holidays. And so, subscription services, the gift of subscription, the gift of, digital goods that is quite, transformative since COVID times, I would say. But then just generally thinking about also the future of where our experiences are going. So I obviously am a big fan of social commerce, but also thinking about commerce in the metaverse. And that phase to me is quite exciting about where business could grow and can grow. Lots of exciting things happening in the market, but not fully tapped yet. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we evolve as payment systems providers as well as e-commerce providers to service that space in future as well.
Yeah, and just adding on to the holiday season, I mean, it's coming, quickly on top of us here, and the best part about the holidays is, things change. People's order values go up, different sort of purchasing behavior and stuff like that. And it's really important then to consider what are the type of things that make sense, the different payment methods that make sense, and are you able to have that flexibility with your integrated solution in order to optimize for that period of time and then go back to maybe something more traditional for the rest of the year as well?
Absolutely. I'd love for us to talk a little bit about the payment services. What do you think, Ritesh? Shall we go there?
Yeah. And so, I would encourage as you look at how to create a proper payments experience, some of the things that I would look at is how it integrates with the platform, right? And from that perspective, how easy it is to, work with the e-commerce platform that you have, whether it be Magento open source or Adobe Commerce, and how you can bring in sort of all of that holistic data that helps you with the overall, order processing and fulfillment of those orders. So, for example, the solution that Adobe and PayPal have worked on really brings together all of the order information, but the payments information, all in sort of the admin, all in one place. And so people can sort of see a, start to finish view of, hey, this order's been shipped, but, has the payment settled and collected? Or, are there any nuances where maybe I've shipped something out and I haven't collected for some reason, or I've collected and I haven't shipped, type of thing. So I think those are things that are super important as you consider that in totality, the integration aspect of it. It's got to be easy and it's got to work, and it shouldn't feel like an add-on that you're forced to go different places to aggregate all of that payment information.
And I'll add to that. So from our perspective, we hear a lot from our merchants, our developers, about a couple of things when it comes to payments. One is core payment services need to work. Like, payment needs to be the easiest thing in the process, and there should be no shock to the system, nor should a person feel like they're not being taken care of. So that is table stakes. But what we're hearing increasingly is the choice in the payment methods that our consumers now want. So everybody here probably has a favorite payment system or method that you use. I'll throw out a couple of names. For example, some folks might like pay later options with Klarna, with Affirm, with PayPal. There are other folks who love card processing, and they'll always just process with cards because you might be getting some wonderful points or sort of schemes that you have along with your card processing. Others might love Venmo, or they might like some other digital wallet, Apple Pay, etc. So I'm just throwing out a couple of choices that folks have available, and they might gravitate towards those payments. One of the big trends we're seeing is, of course, payment service providers need to have that component of choice through and through. And the more it scales globally, the better. So that is something that we keep in mind when we build, obviously, our payment systems, is just for these choices to be available and working globally. In addition, there are some trends that we're seeing. I'm sure everyone here knows about Pay Later. Regardless of sort of how we feel about Pay Later, it's still a payment offering that is very popular. And if you see sort of the way demographics look, more of the younger folks are gravitating towards the Pay Later options. So that is something to probably double click on and understand who your base is, customer base is. And if we understand their demographics and their usage patterns and behavioral patterns, it becomes a little bit easier to offer those choice of payments to them as a result. So that is something we're really excited about. And I'll actually add, if you look at the market trends, some of the things that are happening in Asia Pacific are really exciting. I think the entire continent seems to have leapfrogged from cash to digital, and there's lots for us to learn from sort of the rapid adoption that has happened. I'm quite excited actually about some of the things we're learning from India, Singapore, Hong Kong, and of course China as well. So there's lots to learn there, and lots of exciting changes that are coming, and we sort of need to keep up with everything that our consumers are asking for us to be ready with.
And I think what you sort of just gone into is just hearing you talk, you can already at least in my mind, I'm seeing the complexity that just increased with multiple payment methods, multiple geographies, and how does it all make sense? There are solutions out there where, and PayPal has one that does this, that sort of dynamically figures out where your shopper is and what are the right APMs, alternative payment methods, and ways to target that particular customer. So again, solutions that help you sort of not have to, solve that problem over and over again are ones that are super, I think, interesting for folks to consider. The other aspect that I think we just touched upon, but should also consider, is sort of a whole developer and agency component of payments, for example, right? It's a tough business to differentiate, all payment systems except credit cards. But from an agency perspective or developer perspective, I think one of the things to keep in mind is when something goes wrong, how can it be, like, who is that partner that can mitigate the issue as quickly as possible, right? Because this payments is, if you're selling online, you have to be able to charge for the item, and if you don't, your business is pretty much dead right there, right? I haven't seen an online IOU system yet, so until then, we're going to have to figure out how to keep payments up and running. And so as developers and agencies, you want to make sure that you've got a partner where, again, there's a problem there. Let's make it someone else's issue to go and figure out, and the experts to tackle that stuff. And that's why from our perspective, an Adobe and PayPal perspective, our partnership is one where we're able to bring out a solution, and now customers, whether it is a problem with checkout, whether it's a problem with performance, whether it's a problem with payments, at least in our payment services offering, you can call Adobe, and Adobe will take care of it, right? Or if we need to work with PayPal, who we've got the strong partnership with, we can do that. So looking at sort of that landscape and that lens, I think it's super important to make sure that you've got, that type of coverage, because it just makes your life's easier than that way, and you can focus again on more of the value add that you provide to customers instead of troubleshooting why an order didn't settle or why some payout didn't happen to the merchant, et cetera, et cetera.
Actually, let me do a quick customer or a group poll here. How many of us consider ourselves developers in this audience? Okay, so we have a few developers, but certainly I can probably guarantee all of us here work with developers in order to make our business possible. Is this correct? Can we do a show of hands of how many people interact with developers? Okay, so maybe I'll just have you walk in the shoes of a developer, and let's do an exercise in empathy. Typically, a developer, whenever they take a look at the system that you're asking them to build or support, there are a few things they'll think about. They'll think about, is this functionally a sound proposition or not? Does this even make sense for my business? Hopefully they'll rely on you a lot as business experts in order to figure that out. But then a developer is going to try and figure out, is this system usable or not, right? Are the SDKs, the APIs, the documentation correct for me? Do the features make sense for me? Does it apply to the business? So they're constantly doing that rationalization, probably working with you on figuring out whether the specifications meet the needs that you want. And then lastly, of course, it's our job, both on Adobe's side and PayPal's side, to make sure a developer can come to our ecosystem and really feel like they're loved and taken care of. It shouldn't be a jarring experience that we throw at them. It's like, all right, now you figure out how Adobe works, right? It's a huge brand name. It's your job. That's not right? It's our job to make sure that the life of the developer is easier, because as you know, developer resources are scarce, expensive, and they have a job to do, right? And so that's our part to solve. And then the last mile of that is we want to take care of our community. So obviously everything that Magento does, it's a fabulous playbook of how the industry needs to show up, and there are many lessons that we're taking as well. So that's sort of how the gamut of problems or the opportunity with developers is how we see it. And quite honestly, a developer's journey, if you think about how they're evaluating, they're going through a discovery exercise, they're going through a building exercise, so they're building out the product for you, then they're testing things for you, and then going live. So there are at least 4 or 5 distinct things that your developer does, and the exercise in empathy there is to make sure each of these pillars makes sense, is done with elegance, and the developer comes out of this exercise with dignity and patience and actually can be a brand ambassador for you as well as the providers who are working with the developer. So that's at least how we're approaching it. We're eager to learn. If there are problems that you're seeing or if there's opportunities you're seeing, we'll all love to hear from you. I have my colleagues here at the front of the table here with Christina, Monty, and Pato, as well as Nicole, who's joining, who can absolutely listen to you and your experiences with PayPal. And then, of course, Ritesh, you're here to talk listen about Adobe Commerce as well. So I don't know if you had anything to add in terms of developer experiences.
No, I think that's good. I think that's covered. And what I said before, right, is payments is a really sort of tricky situation. At some point, we're all payment systems are selling red apples, right? And so you don't pick based on the product or the product feature, but you pick on some of the things that Mudita was talking about, whether it's the integration, whether it's the support, and you don't want the developers to have to sit down and figure out which one of these payment services is better, because from a product and functionality standpoint, typically very similar.
Awesome.
Should we open it up to the group and see if there's any other areas that we want to cover, or any pressing questions around sort of anyone's payments journey? Everyone happy with their payments experience? That's exciting.
That's good news. Yeah.
That's exciting. All right.
I'll say this, on behalf of all developers across the globe, please give them a tight hug. They put up with a lot. And of course, please do reach out to us via channels in case there are opportunities to better engage with you as well.
And if there is something that you guys are too shy about to talk about right now, or if there's some questions that come up, we've got colleagues at the Adobe booth who are, very well versed on the payment side, and then we've got PayPal folks here. And, part of this is I've been involved in payments for, over 20 years now. Got into it accidentally, but loved it and stayed. And, part of it is just an educational process, right? And the more that we all know about, how payments works and how to deliver that right experience, then we can all be more successful, not only for ourselves, but also for the customers that we serve also.
Awesome. Thank you,
Cool.
everyone.
I think let's go eat,
Let's go.
right? Is it
All
lunchtime
right.
now?
I think there's one more left.
Oh, just kidding.
Thank
I
you.
didn't say
Thank
that.
you, everyone.